chase the moonlight. I work hard every day for a working man's pay, but I'm letting loose tonight. I think I'm gonna rise up, riding high. Ain't nothing gonna hold me back. Now I'm on the move, got nothing to lose. Like a freight train off the tracks. Come on up the mountain, set yourself free. Come on up the mountain, boy, listen to me. Come on up the mountain, set yourself free. Come on up the mountain, boy, listen to me. I drift on the old Coe, snaking down through Cherokee. Wash my soul in the river, that water's gonna set me free. It's time to rise up, riding high. Ain't nothing gonna hold me back. Now I'm on the move, got nothing to lose. Like a freight train off the tracks. Come on up the mountain, set yourself free. Come on up the mountain, boy, listen to me. Come on up the mountain, set yourself free. Come on up the mountain, boy, listen to me. Right on the hills tonight, you can feel it all around. Let's climb up to the highest point, and we all can scream it out loud. Come on up the mountain, come on up the mountain. Set yourself free, set yourself free. Come on up the mountain, boy, listen to me. Come on up the mountain. Yeah. You ready? Hey. Let's go. Back. Yo, once again I'm back around. Real shit back in style. Haters reconcile. I'm so black and proud. First class tickets now. Feet all in the aisle. Everybody looking down. Everybody get red when you drown, huh? Look at me up. I'm putting it down, you picking it up. Checking the models, they want us to go to college just so we can be stuck. Go to school to make a living, or teach yourself to make a fortune. Common sense, welcome to the apocalypse. I'm one of the horsemen. I don't need your endorsement, I don't need reinforcement. Giving you your last warning, cause I'm at my prime. Yeah. I'm at my prime. Whoa. Have I gone too far? Do you detect something different? If you look inside my head, would you say something's missing? If you could give all your riches just to say the word, would you risk it? These politicians so old, can't tell if they're dead or they living. Better ask Kathy Griffin. You know I like to raise stakes. We was always taught to hit the gas, we ain't even know they made brakes. We control our own fate, watching dreams take shape. Try to keep us out, we gon' freak out, turn this water cake. I don't need your mandate, don't need you to elevate. I'm about to detonate, cause I'm at my prime. Yeah. I'm at my prime. Said I'm at my prime. We at our prime. Hey, hey, we at our prime. Yeah. I'm at my prime. Hey, hey, I'm at my prime. Whoa. Said I'm at my prime.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Carpet. What do we call this show? Carpet Pythons Television. Oh, I deserve one of these tonight. Hey, I still have to work on the intro, but at least I got the sound right. Yes. Yes, well done, Mr. Bourneman. Yeah, talking to about myself in the third person. We already got a few people watching. Hello, everybody. Let me just make sure the level's all right. Can you guys hear me all right? The usual questions at the start of the show. I think I finally got everything under control. I've got the echoes gone. I've got the different views right. I've got, I think it's, yeah, there we go. Hello, Heath. Hello, Jason. Hello, Nick. And the rest of you, there's always just the silent majority in the background there, just watching and viewing and hopefully enjoying this show. I talk a lot of shit, and I'm working on the language. So I've allowed myself one word, shit. Okay. And it's not allowed to go. I need you guys to reprimand me if I go and use other words like that, because I'm conditioning now. It's Paul, yes, hello. I'm conditioning myself now to become a more professional face of the station. So yes, welcome. We've got I think it works. It works leaving a question there. Richard Ackett, g'day mate. Yes, all the way from the US. What's the time in the US of A at the moment? It's nice to have a community of people that enjoy the same things, carpet pythons. I might not be a practicing carpet python breeder anymore, but I still enjoy seeing what people are making. I was like, I don't think we ever stop, especially where we're heading in the Australian market. We're really excelling at, I think, in the world stage at the moment. And I don't think we have to stand back for anybody. I really do think our local guys are stepping up stepping up the game. 4 a.m. Yeah, no, that's too late for me to be up. 4 a.m. I'm not spring chicken anymore. So I asked. So it looks like it works. Every day before a show, I'll post a question on the carpetpythons.com.au page. And we'll see, people can fill in there if there's anything I can help them with, Some of the things that get asked is really like should be a solid show talking to the relevant guys. I'm lining up stuff, so just be aware. We are lining up, but I expect up speakers. I'm expect a certain, I'm trying to get a certain standard of video quality for the show. So, to help, I'm helping the guys set up their rigs and their cameras and stuff like that. Ideally, what I'd like to have at some stage is like a screen with split into 4 with 4 different faces on there, and we can have roundtable discussions. It's all possible, it's all possible. My mum's, hello, midday in South Africa. Yes, hello, mum. Yeah, loyal supporter there all my life. Thanks for watching. So ideally, I'd like to have that coming down the road. We've got a little something, a surprise for Friday night. So watch on Friday night. Now that we've got all the technical glitches sorted out, and I keep learning. I keep watching videos online to make sure that I'm using the right equipment, to make sure that I'm using the best tools for the job. Yeah, so let's have a look. I just want to open up all my stuff here to go and have a look at some of these questions that were asked earlier. So this is really the more informal show of carpet pythons. I think Friday nights will leave for the really big shows, and we'll let it run. Last weekend I wasn't expecting for people to actually sit around for 2 hours, and we kept going. I think we can go for 8 hours max on this, but we're not going to go for 8 hours. But we can, now that I'm mentally prepared for long interviews like that and long shows like that, I think we can might have to scale it up a bit. Animal husbandry, yes, I like that you talk about good. Yes, it is important, good animal husbandry. I don't condone bad animal husbandry. I'd like people to do the best with what they can afford. And it's like I always say. I see there's all these forums where people are discussing lighting and thermostats and stuff, and it really boils down to the user. Little bit. It's got a little bit of it's involved in the gear, So the gear plays a small part in it, but reptile keeping equipment is only as good as the person using it, and you can get the same type of results out of a $5 Bunnings globe as you can get some of these fancy packaged globes that you buy at reptile shops. It's the same type of globe. You might not get the same amount of hours out of it, but it does the same type of job. If it's not a UV light or something, if it's just a standard halogen globe, you can, if you use it right, you can get some years. I used to use proper thermostats on lights, and I got years. Dimming thermostats extend the lifetime of your lights by years. So you need to. You have to. You can't give. I said to a friend of mine today, I said, I pride myself on giving you the right answer. If I don't know the answer, then I will say I don't know the answer. So I try my best. If I know, I've had a bit of experience about a lot of things. If I don't know, I'll tell you I don't know. It's as simple as that. I'd rather not tell you if I say I don't know, then I might find somebody that knows and I might ask them. But I know we sort of, the longer you are in this industry, you know who the right guys are to go and ask the questions. A lot of people just don't know who to ask. And that's why the internet can be so overwhelming to somebody that's just joining these groups. Who do you listen to? If you're new to the reptile keeping business or the reptile keeping hobby, it's very hard to know who to trust. And I'm not saying you have to trust me, but I've backed up my things that I say by years of experience with that type of stuff, and hard learning, trial and error stuff. Luckily, people don't have to do it. Luckily, people don't have to learn through trial and error in today's time, if they know where to look for the right answer. Okay. So let's just switch over to cameras here. I think it's this one. Yes, so we can still see now I'm hoping everything works here with the chat still. So I've got a smaller screen now for chat, but we can see the carpet python page. I hope you like that split. Now you can see my I didn't put all my lights on tonight. I just wanted to see if I don't overheat like I do, like a motor engine. You don't want to get too hot. It might blow a gasket. Here we go. So let's just have a look at some of these comments. So let's just see the comments. Oh no, what are you doing, Facebook? What are you doing? I know the prompts. I'm so sick of all the prompts on Facebook. To do this and do that, and you want to add these friends, and I'm just sick of it. Just. Okay, so here's a question. Okay, so there's a question. So okay, now we'll go to just all comments. Now, feel free to throw stuff in there if you need to ask other stuff. But let's just work through some of these photos before we go all crazy on the chat. All right. So, we start with a classic cluster for me, because I just love the whole hypo and caramel that was the joke that I was making. It wasn't bad spelling, it's just caramels. I know the Americans love to call their caramels. So that's just me nitpicking, but I don't know, something about the word that just drives me nuts. Okay, so Matt Little, I think he's messing with me there. Nice one, Matt. Caramels, yeah. James says, so we need to discuss this, the whole story of where the caramels came from. See, I'm talking like America. I'm saying caramels now. Why? Caramels came from, and difference or lack thereof between caramels and hypo. Most of the new people don't know. Okay, now, I don't know. The first clutch of snakes that I saw an ad in the Herb Trader when I got to Australia, and it was for coastal carpet pythons, and it was down in Torquay. Was it Torquay? Yeah, it was somewhere down where Geelong is. And I thought in those days that was just around the corner. So I got in my little old Nissan shitbox, or no, it was a Mitsubishi shitbox, drove down there. Hours later, got to the guy's house, and he had a clutch of these coastals. And man, were there a lot of variation. There a lot of hypo, things that had no pattern on it. And there was like normal looking coastals. And I looked at these snakes and I thought, man, that's fascinating that they can be so varied in a clutch. And about half of them were like really light colored. There was like stuff in between, and there was stuff right on the darker sides. And that's where I sort of went, there's such variation that it's possible, it is definitely possible to line breed coastals into that direction where they have less pattern. Okay, so right from the start, I thought, well, that's something you could work with. Trait that you can reduce the pattern over time. Then a few years later, I went down to Simon Stone, to Southern Cross Reptiles, and I went to go and see Mark Sim down there. And a lot of the cool stuff that are around now is because this is one of the guys that a lot of people don't know who this guy is. Mark Sim, let me just change the camera angle so you guys can see my face. Mark Sim was the originator of, I don't know if he was an originator. I just know I saw the first real hypo carpet python, and I'm pretty sure he got that from Rob McLeod. Pretty sure. Rob McLeod's a breeder in Queensland that used to go on Aussie pythons as True Blue, but he arguably makes some of the nicest hypos, pure coastal hypos in Australia, in the world for that matter. Like seriously. Then I know what happens with, and I'm not sure, it sort of blurred the lines between the caramels and the hypos were there, but I think the caramels popped up earlier in the scene, right around the same time as what the caramels were popping up over in Europe. So I'm assuming, and I know a lot about this stuff, that the caramels came in the same way as the Jags came in originally through Sydney, all right? Through a well-known fraudster in Sydney. He knows. He's watching this show. I'm sure he is. So they popped up on the scene and the guy started working with the caramels, and it was always the same guys that sort of was mingling in that thing. So now the timelines, I've been around this. This has been around for a while. So don't take my word as gospel, okay? But I know that the hypos that I saw down at Mark Sim's place, I don't know, he had a website, I think he had a name as well for his business that he had for the snakes. I can't remember now. Maybe there's people watching that remember that part of the thing. But it was really early. We're talking 2006, maybe 2005. He popped up on Aussie Pythons. He always showed his stuff, and man, people were just going crazy about his snakes. So I saw that hypo there, and in his collection, and I went, oh, it's beautiful. And then a while later, he sent me a photo of a jaguar that they were organizing from Sydney. Just one photo. I said, oh, don't share, the usual. Don't show people. Then the next thing I know, so those guys, I'm tipping it was Simon Stone and Mark, they made hypo jaguars from that line. And to the best of my knowledge, and now the only guy that can really confirm this would be Wayne Larkham, because he was back those days. They were real tight down in South Australia. All this stuff comes out of South Australia, but I know that those super hypo jags originated down there, and that's where the super hypos come from. So I'm pretty sure that the hypo line that everybody's working, and they are beautiful snakes. I never really. Because it was the word on the street was that I wasn't supposed to have access to these snakes, so nobody was allowed to sell me any of these hypo jags. So I just decided to go in a totally different direction and make kick-ass jags, jags and stripe things and fucking you name it. Those were the days. Because sometimes you get deprived of something and then you just make better of what you've got. You have to just resort to that. So sorry, I just need to sip of my. So, but the caramel stuff, I was never a fan. Too much black in them. The weird thing is you hatch, like later on in the piece, I hatched jaguars, zebra jaguars they looked like they were caramels, but then, and I mentioned it in a photo that I posted. I hatched a lot of stuff that looked like caramels, but ended up being normal. So I don't know I've seen some of the overseas guys with their super caramels and stuff like that, and I don't really know, because I just really didn't. I guess I was just disappointed that I couldn't get my hands on them, because I would have liked to work with them. And the first real super hypo that I saw in person was one that came in from Southern Cross, and it was one of their holdbacks. And man, that thing had one black scale on it. It was absolutely phenomenal. absolute breathtaking snake. And I mean, you see stuff now. Still, I think Wayne posts photos of his super hypo still, and even at 6, 7, 8, 9 years, I don't even know if they still fantastic looking snakes. Now on the other side though, a few years later, Rob McLeod started to show off these hypos. Man, they also had I've got photos of them on my website if you want to go and have a look at the hypos. I've got a hypo coastal section in my website that you can look at some of these photos. And we ended up getting a hypo coastal I got one from Joe Ball that I think was selling them for Rob McLeod. And it was a beautiful snake. I mean, and the babies, mode of inheritance for me when it comes to those things is really, because I haven't made so many, I can't, people say it's incomplete dominant, but then you can get weird ratios where you have more of them and less of them and whatever. And, it wasn't really my thing. But to answer that question, then, there's, I figured you had just spoken the bear, but okay, so then there's more. I'm just going to read some more here. Difference between I keep saying caramels and hypo. Then the poly stuff like hypo bredli also goes to polygynic. And then the hypo bredli originated. The first photos I saw of hypo bredli was from Roy Pales. He had them on his website. And I was just like, the good old days. He had hypo bredli on there, and man, those things were just. That was one of those sites you used to go and troll, because Aussie pythons didn't have, and the guys tend to be selective with what. And Roy wasn't a big. I don't think Roy ever went on Aussie pythons, but he posted a lot of all his stock that was for sale and stuff. He used to have photos on his website, and that's the first place where I saw the hypo bredli. And I think all the hypo bredli all over the world originate from those original lines. They ended up in Europe, and from Europe, they get laundered. They get laundered into Europe through a certain breeder in Europe that everybody just looks away when he gets new stuff that pops up on his price list. And then they go to another breeder in America that, because they are legally out of Europe, it's okay. I mean, and then they've the audacity to bitch about smuggling. What a joke. But in any case, let's not get upset again. Matt Little says most caramels and hypos. I think they're different. I do think they're from different lines of hypos and caramels. Let me just see. It's a bit of an audio, no idea too. Okay, yes. So let's just go here again. Sorry. I'll put the desk up. Sorry, I'm jumping around, but it's Wednesday night. Give me some slack. So I know the lines well, just taking the piss. Okay, so that was it. Then we've got proving new morphs. That's always a touchy one, and we don't want to upset people. People get very, very upset when you start talking about proving out lines. But you know what? Since I started keeping snakes here in Australia, and since I started with mutations in the early 90s, with albino Burmese pythons and stuff like that, when I was living out of Australia, it's always been the thing about proving mutations out. It's not a simple process. What Simon Stone did, let's just go how Simon Stone did it. So Simon Stone he took Blondie, which, T negative albinism, is a, you can look at it and you can sort of know what's going to happen if you put the babies. But I know that his arrangement with the Northern Territory government was, and now this is many, many years before a lot of the people watching now started keeping reptiles. His arrangement with the Northern Territory government was that he would have one clutch out of that snake, and he would split the clutch, and one half of the clutch would go back to the Northern Territory, and he'll work with the other half of the clutch. So what he did was he took his half, raised them up super quick. It was crazy to see how big his side was versus the ones because the Northern Territory was supposed to take them back straight away after they were made, but they just, like every government authority, they just sort of forget about that stuff because it's not really high on their priority list. So he had these cages. He had this room with a wall full of cages, and he had all these heads that were there. Okay. So he took those heads. He must have had 12 or 15 of those heads, and he put the heads back to each other. And according to the Mendelian laws, over all those clutches, the 25% across the group was albino. He didn't sell them though. He didn't advertise that they were for sale then. He told people that he made them, and people were going crazy. But it's so obvious that it was a definite mutation that when he did put albino males over those head females, that there was half. It's pretty straightforward. T-minor. But now to prove other mutations out might take a little bit longer, because they might represent sort of the intermediate stages of certain it's hard to every mutation needs to be approached in a different way, especially when the what else? I forgot that now. The phenotype looks similar. Especially when the phenotype looks similar to something that you would find in a natural state. So you get lighter ones, you get darker ones. Then it's harder to prove it out, because then people can say, but it could just be one that's got reduced melanin, and that happens. A hypo is not just a genetic. Hypomelanism means he's got reduced black. Whether it's genetic, and that's also genetic. It's a reduced black genetic. But whether it's reproducible to the point where you can, say like a full clutch is going to, you have to make a full clutch of hypos for you to say, and I'm not picking on anybody here. Please don't think I'm just using that as an example. All right. It's like T positive albinism, that would, no, that's not a good example, but that's the only thing I can think of now. So it's hard. It's not just a quick, 2-3 clutch thing. You need to have at least, I would say, for you to solidly prove out a mutation, you need to have at least 10 clutches. And if it's something cryptic like hypomelanism or any of those slightly reduced things, you need to at least have a full clutch made from 2 that are reduced melanin like that. All right. And I'm not picking on anybody here. I'm just saying, for you to be taken serious, you need to prove it out to the max and not just half-ass it. All right, if that makes sense. Let me just see what else is here. Okay, so there's a few people starting. Yeah, Troy is in the chat as well. He said, yeah, it was the best marketed mutation in Australia. Really, he went all across. Simon Stone went all across Australia with a couple of these albinos, and he showed people and had the talks about them, and he showed his results. He went all over Australia and he did meetings at all the societies, and he told people about it, and he presented his data so people could see that it was legit. There was a way to do things in those days. That's the way to do it. Does size matter, Michael Dutton? Yeah, okay. There's somebody else. This is a good question. There was another question here that somebody asked. Okay, Nick. I don't know how to say your surname, so I'm not going to butcher it on air. Nick asked rough breeding weights for males and females, and maybe the difference in maternal incubation compared to normal incubation in tubs and incubator. That's one thing I was thinking about today. I'm too much of a control freak, so I've never hatched a clutch maternally. And that's something that I regret now, but I'll do it one day. I'll still do it one day. Leave mum with the babies. From what I can see and from what data presents to us, it seems like the hatch rates are higher for maternally incubated eggs, because I guess mum adjusts the temperature to suit the development of the embryos, and that to me makes sense. If she can slow it down if they're going too fast, if their metabolism is too high, she can lower the temperature. She can heighten the temperature if the metabolism is too low of the clutch, and they can all sense that through their scales. So it would make sense that to do that. Yeah, Peter Birch is one that does a lot of maternally incubated clutches. Yeah, I'll do it still one day.
Then there's rough breeding weights of males and females. Now, I used to read books and books and books, and everybody used to say, females need to be like 4 years old, and they need to be like at least 2 kilograms, and males need to be like nothing less than 800 grams to a kilogram, before they breed and stuff. And I found out over all the clutches that I did that it really boils down to, let me just change the camera angle here again. It really boils down to age. A good age for a female to breed would be 4 years. 3 to 4 years old. That is a healthy age. I have seen far too many females die from not just my own, from friends, other breeders. I've seen that they are a lot more prone to reproductive failure when they are bred at like 18 months. 18 months? Can they be? No, not 18. It's 18 months. So they get pumped, they get force fed. And by force fed, I mean they get fed to grow. And, they pack on the size, they've got these tiny little heads in comparison to their bodies, like they are pushed to breed. And I've seen far too many. I've seen guys have success with that. I've seen guys breed at 18 months with a female. But I've seen as much of that success. I've seen probably more failure with females of that age. So I recommend that a female needs to be at least 2.5 years, probably at the minimum. 2.5 years to 3 years. I mean, that's sort of, we'll round it off, round it off. You're not going to breed her, So I recommend them to be closer to 3 years old, and I recommend that they need to have at least 2 kilos. I've bred, although on the contrary, I've had a jungle. I've had a 5-year-old jungle weighing a kilogram. She was a slow starter and whatever. She had a small clutch of 10. And she was only a kilogram. I could literally, when she was coiled on, I've got a photo somewhere. I'll see if I can post it online. But I couldn't believe, or 8, it was 6 or 8 eggs. I can't remember. I mean, this is many years ago. But I could literally, one of those little round takeaway bowls, the clear ones that you get at the, at the fish and chip shop that they put the, dim sims in. She could literally fit into that bowl when she was coiled onto her eggs. I actually think I have one of those. The photo is of her on a scale with, with the eggs and then a little bowl next to it to give you sort of perspective of how big she was. So it's crazy. So for females, I think it's more an age thing. With males, it's a myth. Young males, anything less than 2 years, they'll breed, but you seem to have a high ratio of infertile clutches. And whether that is just because they've you get males that can go, but it's never like massive amount of clutches. I found with males as well, like closer to 3 years, you get more viable clutches from a male, and then the older they get, they're just better. I mean, like I said in the previous show, I had a male that one season, I couldn't believe it. I was using ultrasound, so I could see what size the follicles were, and if you know what you're looking at, you can literally put that male in with that female once, have a good solid hookup for a few hours. And he'll sire from one introduction and a proper mating. You could have, like, I think he had 12 clutches, a big old albino Darwin that had over a bunch of head females, like hybrid head females and stuff, But it's possible, like a little bit older. There's always a little bit, err on the side of older females. Maybe there are other breeders that would argue the fact, I'm just going on what my personal experience was with that. Is the sound still okay, guys? Yeah, no echo? Whatever. It's a little bit quiet out there. But we've got good numbers. The numbers are up, so I'm happy with that. Now, Richard Hackett asked jungle carpet python lines and localities in Australia. Ugh, that's never been for you to really understand the jungle python lines in Australia, you have to have grown up here in those areas, and you have to really have a passion for jungles. The perfect guy to ask about that would be Roger Lester. I can't think of a more knowledgeable. There might be other guys, Nick Stock, Rex Stock, those guys that live in that area and that have done a lot of breeding with that. Russell Grant might know. It's all guys that I'm going to try and get onto. I'd like to get Nick Stock on. I don't even know if he keeps reptiles anymore. But you have to really be into that type of stuff. And I mean, I'm just saying, I could sit here and waffle on about localities, but I've never been to those localities, and I've never really studied the localities. To me, jungles have always either been pretty or they've been ugly. So I look at a jungle, and if I like the look of it, I like really dark ones, really high contrast ones. So if it has a lot of white, a lot of yellow, and a lot of black, and then no tipping on the scales, I think that's sort of the universal rating scale for jungles is how much tipping they have. Now, for those of you that don't know what tipping is, it's sort of like a black flecking on the yellow scales in jungles. And I think that's what, a lot of people go on about there. They will, I see a lot of guys do this, and it drives me nuts, because there's no way you can, you see a guy say, oh, my Jag is going to have high yellow baby, fluoro jungle Jags, and I go, but you just can't say that, because it doesn't relay like that. I mean, I've seen very few mind-blowing Jags in Australia, like extremely high yellow. I mean, you can just have to go. I've posted some photos of Martin Rosemont in, I think I said his surname right, I think he's in the US. He works with some of those scream Jags. It's literally luck of the draw. I mean, I look at some of the Jags that I made over the years, and I honestly, I think James Denham asked, some of the projects and what my outcomes. A lot of the time, you just don't know it's going to happen. But it opens your eyes. If you have a certain looking, like a specific, like a female that looks a certain way, gives you a certain looking Jag. But it comes through trial and error. For somebody to say, oh, this snake's going to have a braai, and has never bred that snake, there's no fucking way that you're going to know that snake is, swear jar. Sorry about that. There's no way to say what a female is going to give you unless you've had clutches from her and you've raised the babies. So if you're telling people that you're going to have this is going to give you this bright, eye blistering jungle Jag, and you've never bred that female to that male, there's no way you can say that. So that's false marketing. Please don't fall for that stuff, and please don't predict the future if you haven't done it before. It's not going to work your way, unfortunately. Sometimes guys are lucky. Majority of the times, if guys are carrying on about them and showing photos of matings and carrying on, and they're new to the scene, they never even have clutches. So please don't care about all these photos of snakes in coitus and mating and hooked on. A lot of guys just never breed those snakes. It's all just means nothing to see a snake mating with each other. It really doesn't. And that's my rant for the night. So let's move on to more pleasuring things. All right. Then he says, best times to keep your room between in winter. So I don't know. Winter, I let the temperature drop at night to whatever it wants to go to. Now, please, if you're living in a warm area in the world, then nighttime temperatures might not go as low as it's supposed to go for your snakes to breed. I find carpet pythons are really resilient to cold temperatures at night. It's very hard to make them sick. So if your snake, if you supply them with a good day, if you supply them with a good daytime temperature, like in a length, it all boils down to day length and temperature. In winter, I tend to give them higher basking areas for shorter periods in comparison to in summertime. In summertime, they'd get the standard 12 hours at, say, 35 degrees. In winter, I would shorten the daytime period, but I'd give them a hotter hotspot. So they warm up quicker in the shorter time. You have to supply them with the heat to perform their bodily, their metabolic needs. They still have to fulfill those needs to stay alive. It's usually in winter that people don't take into consideration the effect that the room has on your heating equipment. In a cold room, your heater is not going to be as effective as in a hot room. So you need to compensate for that. If you've got temperatures in summer on a hot spot, that's say 35 degrees temperature or 35 degrees hot. In winter, that hot spot's going to be maybe 28 degrees. So you need to adjust for winter temperatures. And if you have snakes on your if you keep them in racks and they're in the bottom layer of your rack, that floor underneath the rack, and I see a lot of people get sick animals because they don't understand these thermodynamics of those cages. So you need to be able to isolate the bottom layer. Like I used to stick thick pieces of styrofoam on the bottom of the racks where the heating is, so that the heating doesn't radiate downwards. It basically everything shoots up. So the bottom rack still sort of functions right. So there's no real, as long as you can supply them with that hotspot where they can go and sit on and warm up on, even if they can just throw a coil on it. I see people go crazy about it. It needs to, the hotspot needs to be like as big as the snake or whatever. That's not right. You need to, the hotspot needs to be, as long as the snake can get like a good coil on a hotspot, they just circulate the blood, man. They circulate it through their bodies and they heat themselves up. It doesn't have to be the size of the cage, the hotspot. People have weird, but it's because the books don't tell you. The books teaches us other things. So, sorry, I'm passionate about reptile keeping. I love it. It's the best thing ever. So sorry if I get emotionally charged when I'm teaching people stuff about reptile keeping. So there's a hypo thing again. I missed something here. So, James, there was a question about old projects and stuff like that. I think I'll make to use this system and go through photos is a little bit. I'm still learning how to go through, because it only uploads like a certain amount of questions. So I might tackle individual projects and then go, and the stripes will be a whole night's thing, because we can go and delve into that, because that was my thing. And it turned out to be totally what I wasn't thinking it was, and it's a little bit of ego involved with the whole project. And then once you talk shit, you can't pull it back. It's a big joke, really. It's a big joke, but they were fantastic. I loved working with those stripes. They're fucking the best snakes in the world. There's Swear Jar again. So, how often do I come across retained sperm? You wouldn't believe it. The funny thing was, at one stage I was messing. I got a microscope and I was messing around with sperm motility if you extract it from the males, because if you pop sex pythons, it is possible to get live sperm out of them if you manipulate the hemipenes. All right. So I did manage, I had it was just always hard because I wasn't sure if the sperm was. So I did try and manipulate, use little, what's those little drippers, those little sucky dripper thingies that you suck up medicine or whatever. I did use that, but I never had the right medium that allowed the sperm to actually survive, because as soon as sperm leaves the body, they start dying. Because body temperature is really what keeps sperm alive. Although snake sperm. Why are we talking about sperm? Sorry, people. Sorry. Pardon me. I find this stuff fascinating. And the only literature I could find was on Raymond Hoser's website, and he's performed that successfully. And I thought, man, that would be a great technique to perfect when it comes to pythons, to ensure that you introduce the correct male's sperm to the right female, Although it's easy enough, let the males do. But sometimes you have a male that just doesn't want to do anything, and that would be the perfect way to extract sperm and introduce it to a viable female, What else was there? Was it... okay, so talking about the stripes, the size matter. I already covered that. Then winch that I see people breeding animals together with no real thought behind it. Yeah, I do agree. There's all process. There has to be process when you're breeding reptiles. You can't just randomly make reptiles. You have to sort of keep an eye on what's available. You have to sort of keep an eye on what's selling, what's not selling. Make sure that you're not making more of the stuff that's not selling, because all you have to do is to go through the classifieds and see how long ads are up there for. Stuff that sells quickly, that's a type of stuff that you need to go into that direction. But don't just make snakes. You don't have to have a snake. You don't have to breed a snake. If you've got snakes, you don't have to breed them. That's just a lie. You don't have to breed them all. Okay? So yes, and I do think the market's oversaturated for certain things. I still think a beautiful Jag you could get you $600. I reckon I seriously do, but I don't see. I occasionally get photos in that, now that people know I'm doing this show, they send me photos of stuff to look at, and man, I've seen some cool stuff, and I usually tell the guys, hold on to it, don't sell it, refine the line. If you start with a great foundation, it's so much easier to do something proper if you start with great foundations. I wish people would understand that. That's what I always say. Buy the best that your money can afford. Work with the best. And then you're also happy at looking at those animals. If you look at those animals in their cages, you take pride in looking, and you keep entertained. It is nothing worse than looking at a bunch of drab. I mean, I'm talking from experience. I looked for years, I stared at hets, ugly looking mutt hets. But then the reward was looking at the babies. Man, I had some beautiful het visuals from hets that made the horrible years so much better. And then you start working with those. And once you have those, you refine them more and you add more of whatever bloodline you want to add to them, So yeah, raise the snakes, hold them back, keep the best. And a lot of people sell prematurely. I mean, there's a lot of things I regret. No, I bred, when I started breeding seriously, I made the promise to myself that I will never regret selling an animal. So, seeing photos of an animal that I sold to somebody, I will never have those regrets. And too many people sell their snakes prematurely. I see stuff that people sell and I go, why is... And I just think to myself, why would you sell that? Because I've seen, for me, you have to remember, when you're a long-term breeder, your mind has a database, and you've kept a lot of snakes back, and you've held a lot of snakes back, and you've raised a lot of snakes. And the same works for all reptiles. I mean, I can do it with bearded dragons as well, because I had so many, and I raised so many generations, and I saw what they turned into, and I never got rid of any. I was such a hoarder. I was a big old hoarder. When you're a long-term breeder, you can spot the good ones, because you have in your head, you've got a library of animals that you've seen from when they were babies and raised up to 2 years. So when somebody like me tells you, man, you shouldn't sell that, take it serious. I mean, I've got other friends. I mean, I'm going to, blow my own trumpet here. But originally when the head for the bredli, I could never make bredli, half-blood, albino bredli, mixes. I could never do that because the timing's off, and Melbourne climate does something with that. I think we did it at the old warehouse, but I mean, it was after the incidents down there. But I saw they were advertised at one stage, and I said to a friend of mine, get those, get that, because my understanding of raising so many mongrels and seeing how the colors relay in them made sense to me that would be a bright orange snake. I mean, I've seen it with the Murrays as well. The Murray darlings are, it's a different orange because the base colors, and it's hard to say because you need to understand how the pigments interact with each other, because it's not just like mixing paint. It's different. The chromatophores in reptile skin work different to it's not the same as just mixing paint. It doesn't work like that. So he jumped on it, and he's reaping the benefits now. Only one that did anything, or only one that's really ahead with that project. And I saw photos last night. They are spectacular. I'm hoping to see the other one at some stage. The few, no, he's got a few. I don't know how many he's got, but assuming he's got a lot. Knowing him, he's a hoarder as well. So let me just have a look here. So sorry, I don't want to go rant on enough, but I mean it does. Don't breed stuff that be sensible. Think about what you're doing. Let's see. Okay, let's go back up here. How often did you come across retained sperm? Okay, I covered that. Only a couple of times. I had that clutch with Troy, I think, was retained sperm, and then I had a snake have a clutch of eggs like 3 years. 3 years after she had any contact with a male, she had a clutch, but all the babies were deformed, and the one got hatched. One hatched with one really tiny eye, and the other eye was real big. And that snake, I think, he still didn't. they're not viable for long. I think that snake's 2 years old now. He lives with a friend of mine, and I don't know. I haven't seen it for a long time, but last time I saw it, it looked like it was alright. So it eats. Yeah, I don't know. It was not thriving. So I don't think any clutches from retained sperm. I don't think the babies have a good track record of being viable, or the hatchlings. We all know I use babies, hatchlings, same thing to me. Jumped over log figure. There's going an aside whopper. Tiger snake made me jump. Okay, yes, that's cool, Nick. Tiger snakes. I've only seen one, and I don't know. They freak me out. I don't know, I'm not a big venomous. I like the adders, but a fast-moving leopard. Nah, I can handle them, but they're just not my cup of tea. Would anybody be able to confirm what locality blackheads python grow the largest? I'm sure there's guys that can say that. I'm sure Troy could pipe up and say which ones grow the largest. I mean, I guess that boils down to feeding as well. I'm not sure. I've seen some terribly large black-headed pythons in my life, and those usually do nothing. They don't breed. They don't do anything. A black-headed python really needs to have like I think they need to be like that shape. There's like specific shapes, like longer than and higher than rounder. I could be talking at my ass now. Don't take me. I don't know that much about blackheads, but to me, in my mind, they reptile eaters, and reptiles are a lot leaner than mammals, and to me, it just makes sense that they need to be lighter in weight to breed effectively, or to be healthy at least. With exports from WA becoming way cheaper, do you think Marilla imbricata will become more prevalent in the East Coast keeping? I'm not a cross person, but they could probably bring some cool colors. Oh, don't go there. Don't even write it on there, because it's there for the record. Don't say you're gonna breed, make cross. Oh no. Oh, Mitchell, it's you. Sorry, I was just gonna say don't put that in text. Don't write that. Don't let the government see that. I did gamble with that a few years back. They make interesting crosses. They are nice. I can't remember what that was though. What did I make? Oh, it was somebody. I got imbricata, a couple of maybe 3 or 4 imbricatas from the rabbit breeder that I used to deal with over in Geelong. And he put a bredli over imbricata, and that was many years ago. And the snakes did look really nice. I didn't have many. I think I had 1 or 2 of them. I wasn't really my thing, but I took the nicest one, and I was working with that. And then, I lost the collection and stuff, and I didn't really see what it was. But I don't recommend hybridizing them imbricata, just because they're so rare. I really like imbricata. I had a female that took 18 months to start eating. She literally starved herself for 18 months. Eventually her skin started, because when they get malnourished, their skin start to get really thin, and they start, skin tears happen and stuff like that. And I think she was literally on death's doorstep. I kept trying her with rats. And then one night, for some reason, I just chucked a rabbit in her cage, and man, she just destroyed that rabbit and never looked back. I mean, I do remember treating her for a lot of internal parasites, and it's one of the few pythons that I've really seen heavy loads of internal parasites. But that could be just because she was stressed in captivity, and wild caught snakes don't do well, and it's just one of those things. But I eventually got it to go, and she was a great snake eventually. Never bred her though. It seems harder if you get adult females coming in from the wild. It's harder, That's why I take my hat off to people like Dave and Tracy Barker and guys, and the old school reptile keepers in Australia that brought in wild caught snakes and actually managed to reproduce them consistently and whatever. And that makes you guys that are breeding pythons now, it makes your life so much easier that you've got captive bred multi-generation animals that are not reluctant to breed for you. It's become easier and easier. I mean, really, even going back 15 years, it wasn't, breeding snakes was still like a skill that needed to be attained. We know a lot more about them now to make it to breed them successfully, So is it possible to all AI pythons? Oh yeah, I think it is. If you've got the right lab and the right equipment, you could do it easily. As long as you can control the sperm temperature so that it doesn't die. And if you've got some form of solution and transfer method that you can insert insert it into the female without into the right tubes, it's hard to get it into the right channels as well, you know. Thoughts on jag to jag breeding? I've done it a couple of times and it's nothing. We've done it. It's the same results. I see people every year going to make a lot of viable leucistics, and it's, you know, I think the jag mutation was, you know, they popped up in I think the 90s, in the late 90s, and in all those years nobody's made viable leucistics. So, you know, if you're going to make jag to jag, you know, to cut down on the to not have that many siblings, then by all means, because then you'll have less, not always, but you'll in the process you'll have a few eggs that go off that won't hatch, and you'll have dead in egg, you know, leucistics, but you know you could end up with more jags in the clutch, and then have less siblings to be worried about to get rid of. One carpet and plan to have one carpet. Don't plan on making any crosses. Yeah, no, that's rather than one of my prettiest carpets, in my opinion. I think they're better not crossed. Yeah, so that's in regards to Morelia imbricata. I'm surprised that they're not overseas yet. I think probably maybe the next big thing to hit the overseas market is the Morelia imbricata. I think before that happens, I think there'll be albino spotted pythons over there. I just have a feeling that that's just being held quiet because of all the hot territory with the whole smuggling, some smuggling syndicates that are being taken down at the moment. I think people are a little bit worried over in Europe to show us what they've got, you know. So be interesting to see if they cop any backlash from the reptile community. But as we all know, as long as you get an animal from a legal source, then it's not smuggling. You just but you are supporting that industry. So if you're keeping jags, and if you're keeping zebras, and you're keeping all this stuff that clearly didn't have an origin in this country, then you are one of those hypocrites. If you go out and you carry on about the smugglers, then you are one of those hypocrites that, you know, you're just a hypocrite. So that's my other rant for the night. So let me just check what the time is here. If there's anything else, it's been very quiet in the chat. Still a good number of people in there. Any questions? I don't want to go for too long. It's 1 hour now, maybe another 10 minutes or so. So ask your questions now, if I hold your peace. Isn't that the saying? But let me just check if I answered all the questions here. Let me just change the view. Yep. So we got that. Best techniques for all fussy feeders. I think I did mention that in one of the earlier shows. What I usually do with a snake straight out of the egg is I'll let it go for like a month, and then let it have its shed. Sometimes hatchlings don't throw off their first shed, especially if they haven't absorbed the yolk properly. If there's a lot of yolk left in the egg, I found that hatchlings struggle to get their skin off. And that can, if you just let it go, a lot of people say, oh, it hasn't had its shed. Yes, it won't have its shed until you give it a feed. So that usually means some hatchlings will take a meal without shedding. But in most cases, you'll have to put a pinky rat down its throat and get that shed moved. You have to shift the shed. So you have to feed it until it has enough nutrition to actually go through a shed cycle. And then usually that skin is so sticky that it's hard to get it off. Now, a pro tip that you won't read in a book, you can't just set a snake. Okay, but what I used to do is I used to wait for the eyes to clear, to go because the eyes go white or opaque, and then for a few days, and then for a couple of days the eye goes clear again. And then usually what I used to do is I used to just use my finger and rub on the chin underneath if you shed it too early, then it causes other issues. So you need to be very careful. So you take that hatchling, hold its head, and you just gently rub its chin. And if it comes off, if the skin comes off and it's wet, you leave it. If you pick, that's why you have to be gentle. If you pick that skin and it comes off and it's dry underneath it, then that snake's ready to shed its skin. If you let it shed its own skin, it's just going to come off in pieces. So, but when you do it, because it's not going to come, it won't shed with that second skin on it, because there's going to be two sheds. There's going to be the original skin, and there's going to be another skin underneath that to the out of egg skin, and then there's going to be a new skin underneath that. Usually that sticks. For some reason, it's hard for them to shed that. Sometimes they do get it off, but I used to like assisting them with that and making sure that skin comes off. So when you poke at that little piece of skin, and do this at your own, don't, please. I know what I'm doing. I'm giving you a tip now. So, but when the eye's clear, and when you can pick that little piece of skin on the bottom jaw, right at the tip, and it comes off and it's dry, then you can gently maneuver that skin. Then you can peel that skin, comes off in no problem. Okay, you will not hear that anywhere else. This is just something that I've messed up and I've perfected over time, and I still get it wrong, but. Usually, once that skin comes off, they tend to go for food. If they still don't go for food, then it's a trial and error process. I try to always start them. The rat pinky was only if they didn't get the skin off. But normally, I'd start a hatchling snake on something like a medium-sized mouse, or hopper, hopper medium. Same thing to me. I go by looking at them and going, oh, okay, that's the right size. Get a bag of those and you just keep them in the fridge and you feed them to all your hatchlings. Fussy feeders is harder. You can go through the whole process of by now, the lines that are out there should be problem-free when you get them to start. I sometimes think that if a snake doesn't feed on its own, in the wild, they would just die. But in the wild, they would have a lot more choices. Some snakes are just not made to. I mean, I know with albino carpets, they are a lot harder than... they are miserable to get feeding. Some of them are really good, but a lot of them are just terrible at feeding. And a lot of them just want to sort of be handed their food in their mouth, and they'll just start eating at their own pace. And I think it's all... g'day, mate. It's all part of just their genetic makeup. Some of them they're a lot more laid back straight as babies, albino carpets, and I don't think they've got that killer instinct although I've seen some of my angriest snakes that I used to have was jungle 50% jungle albinos. So just have a sip. Talking way too much tonight. And then other tips that I can give, just try different size food. Try live. Some people go, oh, you can't feed them live food. Sometimes some snakes just want to eat live. I've even had hatchlings. One night I had these hatchlings that didn't want to eat. 6 months long. 6 months later, no food. I occasionally gave them like a pinky. And then eventually one night I just chucked frozen solid rat pups in there, or rat pinkies. And the next morning when I came back, they were gone. Sometimes it's as simple as just trying something totally different. I've seen people, I've seen people, and a lot of my friends do it as well, and I've always gone, why? The rat, they put string onto legs, and, the snake eats the mouse, and then the rat gets dragged in. I have absolutely never tried that, because what I used to do was I used to get a bag of mice, full bag of adult mice that stunk of mice, and I take a couple of rats, throw them in there, and I defrost. A lot of people can't do that because a lot of people don't need 100 mice at one hit. But you take a couple of rats, you pour those mice over them, and then when they're all defrosted, you just shake the bucket around so that all those scents get mixed into each other. And I never had any snake refuse one of those that had like that mouse scent on it. Carpet pythons love mice. They do. But if you let them go for too long, then it's harder. The longer they go on, the longer they eat mice, the harder it is to get them off it. But that bucket method where you shake the bucket and gets the scent all over, it works really well for fussy feeders at least. And the same goes for small albino Murray darling carpets, half bud, 50% albino Murray darlings. I had one that took, I think, almost 2 years to start going properly. You also see skin started tearing and stuff like that. And then just one day, I put a rat pinky in there and he just started eating by himself. But I did have to assist him a few times over those two. Not a few times. Maybe once a month I would give him a rat pinky. And it's amazing how much food these things can live off. or lack of food these animals can live off. So I know for a fact that we totally overfeed our pythons in captivity. Every snake that I see, like most snakes that I see in breeders' collections, are overfed. It was amazing. I think I saw, we got in some pythons at one stage at the old shop, and they was real lean, blackhead, like blackheads, and they were real lean. And I thought, nah, not this season. And then a few weeks later, I felt the female blackhead, and she had nice size of follicles. And I went and I looked at her. I said, "There's no way I thought that you would have had a clutch because you she was almost looked underweight." That's what I'm thinking. We keep these animals and we overfeed them on laboratory rats with like a high fat contents or whatever. That's what I always recommend. Feed them younger rats, smaller rats with less body fat, and your snakes would love you for it. And they live much longer lives than these snakes that are being fed jumbo rats and extra large rats and stuff. I don't think they're made to have high caloric intake diets like that, especially from lab rats with that unnatural fat. It's like all like the food we give the lab rats. It's all like, it's not what they don't get the same amount of activity as they get in the wild. It all boils down, starts from what you feed. You feed your animals a decent diet, and they'll reward you with long life and healthy clutches and stuff like that. But that's just my way of seeing it now after how many years that I've done it. So a lot of times you can't afford it's a lot of factors that play into it. There's no one right way to keep reptiles. It's everybody does it themselves. If you feed rabbits, will snake refuse rats? No, they won't. They will still eat. If they eat rats and you put them onto, they might refuse rabbits. But if you start feeding them, if they take rabbits, it's like muscle memory to them. If they eat rats, they will eat mice. They don't stop eating one type of food because you're feeding them, introducing them to another one. Big snakes would probably take rabbits over rats because in their subconscious, if they do own such a thing, it would be instinctually better to have a large meal less often because you don't exert that much energy. By taking down, you spend the same amount of energy killing a small prey item as you would killing a large prey item. So for them, if you're looking caloric intake wise, I think they would prefer feeding one bigger meal less frequently. And I see, young rabbits, I cannot say, they were just the best food that I ever fed snake to adult carpet pythons were young rabbits, lean, young, laboratory rabbits that have been, like fed on a low, like crazy good. And the females all bred. Those were the years that I just managed. As soon as I switched over to rats, the results were dismal at most, So, but I don't want to go too long tonight. I think we're over that time already. Just wanted to thank everybody to look again. I've got a little surprise lined up for Friday night. You'll have to wait and see what happens on Friday night. And thank you for watching. The show's, I think the quality, the sound's good, the visuals are good. I hope I touched on all the answered some of the questions that you asked, and I'll keep doing it. We'll just keep going with the show until there's more people watching the show after it's recorded, and then there's my old mate that keeps watching and keeps hating and. Good luck with you as well, mate. Thank you very much, guys, for watching. I'll let you guys know when see you guys on Friday night. Yeah, keep safe and have a great rest of the weekend.